Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. People often ask, especially in professional circles, they kind of want to know about my past and understand like how I've been able to do what I've done in my career, and then I've ended up where I am. And especially here recently, I've made some videos where I'm really, frankly, I have issues with foreigners, especially fake ones, just overtly fake, total frauds operating out here. And then there's kind of these folks that like sort of sit in the gray where they have some kind of qualifications that might, again, depending on circumstances, be appropriate for what they do if they were in the US. But here in Thailand, it's not appropriate. And people have sort of been like, well, isn't that hypocritical of you? No, it's really not. Because in the past, like I had to walk a very, very narrow path to get to where I've gotten. And so, for example, I only operated in US immigration law for like a decade, okay, because that's exclusively American subject matter jurisdiction. I mean, that's US law. Tax law is similar. Now, unfortunately, we've had those who would like to try and blur things with regard to tax law, but I'm going to leave that where it's at. I've done other videos talking about it. I'm not going to talk about tax specifically right now. What I am talking about, though, is the breach and the difference between what I would like to call sort of affirmative, how did I put this? Affirmative legality. You could also say affirmative rights versus negative liberty or negative freedom. Okay, what are we talking about? If you go back and you look at positive freedom versus negative freedom or negative liberty, I talked about this during COVID. It's basically the right to be left alone. It's basically the right that nobody else can affirmatively bother you about whatever it is you're doing. A lot of Thailand operates paradigmatically on the notion of negative liberty. What are we talking about? Again, if Thais are live and let live as a people, as long as you're not bothering anybody, you can do whatever. Now, as we've discussed in other videos, there are, for example, restricted occupations here in Thailand. Now, your average Thai doesn't know exactly what the rules are or anything like that, and your average Thai is not really trying to bother anybody. Neither is the system designed to really infringe upon negative liberty. As a matter of course, it's not designed that way. But if you're a foreign national here, you're not accorded the same affirmative legal rights as a Thai. It's similar to, my wife, for example, really enjoys going back to America because when she's in America, nobody ever asks her where she's from. In Thailand, people sometimes will ask her, oh, where are you from? Your accent or this, that, and the other thing. In America, people just presume you're an American. It's just sort of the way it is. In Thailand, it's similar. It's presumed you have the negative liberty, if you will, to do whatever, because that's sort of an inherent liberty associated with Thainess, basically. But where you're talking about a foreigner here, they don't have those inherent privileges and immunities that a Thai does. They just don't. So you can't use the same analysis when you're analyzing what a Thai does versus what a foreigner does. This comes up in my particular specific case situation all the time. People will say stuff to me like, well, you say X, Y, Z. I'm Thai. I know that bothers people, but it's not only was it a plenary act making me Thai, which changed the nature of me in fact here in Thailand, but it's a legal fact, if you will. Insofar as I'm a Thai national, I don't have to deal with things like the foreign restricted occupations here in Thailand. Foreigners do. There are some instances where negative liberty acts like a penumbra, if you will, over whatever activities somebody's engaging in. For example, you have a work permit in Thailand, you're a managing director, and you do X, Y, Z in the operation of your duties. Could you get a work permit that specifically said, guy who picked up box and moved it into the back office? No, you're never going to get a work permit that says that. But the penumbra of negative liberty associated with your managing directorship says, yeah, it's not unreasonable that when the managing director walks into his office and there's a box of magazines or t-shirts that they bought for the company, that he picks up the box and takes it into his office. It's just one example of this penumbra. The point I'm trying to make, though, is in the breach, there are times when negative liberty operating is appropriate. There are times when the law has affirmatively spoken to the restrictions on foreigners. And in matters, for example, pertaining to restricted work occupations here in Thailand, the law has affirmatively spoken. And there is a very big difference between foreigners foreigners occupying the sort of breach, if you will, the gray area, and operating in contravention to explicit restrictions, as opposed to those who may be doing something that the law hasn't spoken to on or whatever. Yeah, fine. They're operating in a sort of gray area. They're operating, under sort of negative liberty. We haven't affirmatively said you can't do that. Therefore, effectively, you can. Again, that's not the analysis for somebody who's a foreigner overall, especially where there has been codified law that restricts certain activity.